Yeah, DrippMan, 2 P's. Yeah. What's up, you guys? I'm up at Lambeau Field right now. As a lot of you may or may not be aware, I'm from Green Bay originally, small town kid. And, of course, we got the Green Bay Packers up here. It's like the most proud thing, the thing that the city's the most proud of. You know what I mean? It's the Green Bay Packers. It's like a religion up here. Even if you don't like football, you definitely have to love the Packers up here, and you have to know everything about them. You know what I mean? Of course, the tradition is rich. You know what I mean? Which is well talked about on TV. But like, even they make it sound really glorious on TV, but I promise, like, that is really like an understatement of what the actual experience is here. You know what I mean? Just the way that Lambeau Field is constructed. Not only is it a beautiful stadium, but across the street from there, they built a whole Packer district. You know what I mean? Which is complete with its own NFL-sized field, and it has a bunch of shops, and it has like a bunch of condos around it, and it's like its own Packer community here. You know what I mean? And that's newer, but the Packers have been ingrained in Green Bay's community in a similar way for, you know, like 100 years now. Of course they win a lot, which always helps. But I think that one of the reasons why the Green Bay Packers are, you know, why it's such a religion up here is because, you know, we're a modest city, I think, in terms of attitude that puts in work. And we see results. And I think that, and a lot of people are like mild mannered up here too. You know what I mean? But they're monsters underneath. And I think that the type of players that the Green Bay Packers normally select are great, you know, happen to be great representatives of what the community is around here, which is just like low key guys, you know, like I said, who put the team first, and are willing to, do whatever it takes to make sure that they represent the G the correct way. So growing up, man, Brett Favre was definitely my favorite quarterback, my favorite player. I know he did a bunch of slimy stuff after he retired and all that stuff. And actually there was a couple controversies while he did play. But I was very endeared to him. You know what I mean? He just made football look so fun, and he was just so passionate about it. And, you know, of course it's well documented about his injuries. I just thought he was an animal for playing through like broken thumbs and broken ankles. Like literally in the 2003 season, he literally had to put like a pin in his thumb, you know, to keep it from falling apart. And it was on his throwing hand. And he still, you know, went out there and started every game and all that. So just a very inspirational player. He did throw a lot of interceptions and stuff, which he deservedly gets flack for. However, moving on to Aaron Rodgers, who I very much appreciated because he did bring a Super Bowl here and he was a beast. I don't like that how when people have the conversation of Aaron Rodgers versus Brett Favre, it's just an automatic dub for Aaron Rodgers. I disagree with that. I think Brett Favre definitely deserves a lot more respect. You know, number one, when Brett Favre came, we had been on like a 20 or 30 year losing streak. I think it was like 20 years or something like that. And so when Brett Favre came in, he had to change the franchise by himself. He had to learn by himself. And he came in at a different era that was way more physical, and, you know, there was way less penalties for like defensive backs, you know, just mugging your receivers and stuff like that. So he really had to make shit happen. And he did. That boy not only won a Super Bowl, but he went to a second one, and they lost by 7 points. And usually, you know, quarterbacks don't deserve credit for losing a Super Bowl, but I think Brett Favre, if we're going to compare between him and Aaron Rodgers, he definitely deserves to get a tick over Aaron Rodgers for that second Super Bowl. They both had, you know, plenty MVPs. Obviously, if you want to nitpick and say, hey, Aaron Rodgers had 4 MVPs, Brett Favre had 3. Okay, cool. However, Brett Favre had 3 MVPs in a row, which has never been done in NFL history. So I think that's, if anything, that's even, just based off of that argument. When Brett Favre retired, he was the NFL leader all time in touchdowns and passing yards and a lot of other passing statistical categories. So even though Aaron Rodgers has passed Brett Favre in some of those categories, I don't think that that's as impressive as Brett Favre being the all-time leader when he retired. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be the all-time leader in any statistical category. You know what I mean? So that with a bunch of other things, I think when you talk about their playoff successes or failures, they both definitely left a lot to be desired. You know what I mean? With their playoff performances, we talked about Brett Favre's interceptions before, which obviously always happen at the worst times. But Aaron Rodgers, I feel like on the opposite end, he choked. He just held on to the ball too long, was scared to make plays on the opposite end. So Brett Favre, you're too reckless, and Aaron Rodgers too scared at times. And I like to bring up the game in 2021, the divisional round game against the San Francisco 49ers in 2021. We were the number 1 seed. We're playing them in the divisional round. They wound up beating us like 13-10. We only scored 10 points that game, and it was just painful to watch Aaron Rodgers, only look at Devontae Adams and nobody else. And he can blame that on the other receivers all he wants, but Tom Brady made it happen. You know what I'm saying? So if you're going to talk about the GOAT debate, you know what I'm saying? So Aaron Rodgers, to me, definitely shouldn't, they should be on the same level, him and Brett Favre. They're both equally disappointing, in the playoffs. In addition to, they do deserve to be celebrated for their Super Bowl win. I'm not one of those fans that wants to downgrade the Super Bowl win and say, oh, we only got one. No, that's slimy, because there's a lot of teams that wish they can do that, let alone to get one from each quarterback. I mean, look at Jordan Love, for example. Very talented quarterback. He's made his plays. But it's still in doubt for a lot of people on if he's the next great quarterback, even though we know he's good, but because he hasn't gotten that ring yet. And he's been to the playoffs 3 times already. And, the first year that they win, if our kicker didn't miss that field goal, who knows? Against the 49ers again, who happen to be a thorn in our butts. But if we didn't miss that field goal that year, who knows if we would have won the Super Bowl. And so that's what I mean. A lot of things have to go right for you to win a Super Bowl. So Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers definitely deserve credit for that. They're both great in their own right. But I think Brett Favre, another thing about him is he made receivers better. If you look at all the receivers that he played with, the reason why Brett Favre threw so many interceptions is because he was always believing in his receivers and saying, hey, go make a play. Sometimes that didn't work, but most of the time it did. Look at a lot of the receivers he played with. Some of their highest statistical seasons were with Brett Favre. Now you look at Aaron Rodgers, great quarterback, but did he make receivers around him better? He was always very critical in his post-game conferences about how, guys need to get better. And it starts there as far as the leadership, because normally you see quarterbacks saying other things, publicly, and then maybe getting on their ass behind closed doors. So I thought that's poor leadership. And then on the field, again, he ain't trying to let you make a play. He needs you to be 5 yards wide open and make the throw. And that sounds good and everything, but this is the NFL, bruh. The windows are way tighter. That doesn't just happen on every play that guys are wide open. So yeah. One more thing for Brett Favre. I didn't even originally intend to turn this into a Brett Favre lover video, but I got some shit to get off my chest from my boy. I think another thing that Brett Favre deserves credit for is at age 40, he had maybe the best season of his career. Definitely the most efficient season of his career with the Minnesota Vikings. He turned 40. They won 12 games. Should have won the Super Bowl that year. We ain't gonna talk about his choke against the Saints, but he threw 33 touchdowns against 7 picks, over 100 quarterback rating. Really, to me, should have won the MVP that year. He did that at age 40. Aaron Rodgers, he blew out his Achilles and he sucked ever since at age 40. So I rest my case. I would be curious to see what y'all's opinion on that is, because a lot of times I hear people say that Aaron Rodgers is the greatest thrower of the ball. I don't know what that means, man. That don't mean nothing to me. So let me know what y'all opinion is on that, on who's better. Getting back to this year's Green Bay Packers, I think we have a solid squad. I definitely think that Jordan Love is going to continue to improve and make plays. I think when you look at their wide receiving core, obviously that changed. They're not as deep. They're a little bit more unproven, but I think that's going to be a good thing. I think it's going to be a good thing, because even though we had a lot of talented wide receivers, like these last couple of years, it was really hard for them to find a role. They were really struggling to find a role. So I think there's a method to their madness. Obviously, until they're proven, they're unproven. So that's the unknown. But that's where Jordan Love's leadership is going to come into play this year. And we're going to really see, hey, is he the big vet? You know what I'm saying? That we're paying $100,000 quadrillion to every year, because that's more than just putting up the pretty stats. Of course, Jordan Love last year, 23 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, very efficient. He really quieted a lot of the haters that said he couldn't take care of the ball. But I think this year, if he continues to improve and have that success, it's going to really speak to his leadership with a lot of the young guys. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Jordan Love responds to that challenge. I think also too, looking at the defense, of course, biggest thing, Micah Parsons towards ACL last year. They don't anticipate him being back probably for the first half of the season. The tricky thing about ACL injuries is that, listen, some guys, come back and have some success. You know what I mean? But those guys rarely come back right away at full strength. It just takes time, just to get the leg there. And then also just your mind. You just have to trust it again. So I don't know how much of a factor Micah Parsons is going to be when he gets back. So he's not only going to be gone for at least half the year, he's going to be gone at least 3/4 of the year, in my opinion. By the time he gets in shape, hopefully we're, gearing up for a playoff run, because I think that's when we could really use him. That's really where a big concern of mine comes in, and probably a lot of other Packer fans, because, as evidenced by last year when Micah Parsons got injured, we don't have any other hitters. We don't have any other hitters that can win those one-on-one battles. And so we got to rely a little bit too much on blitzing, and our secondary, is unproven, is not as deep as we'd like to be able to hold up with all those blitzes. You know what I mean? So I don't know that Lucas Van Ness is going to make that big improvement to being a superstar rusher. Because let's be honest, that's what we need. When Micah Parsons was in the lineup last year being a superstar pass rusher, they eased everybody else to kind of float around him and do what they do. Without that number one, Lucas Van Ness, even if he improves to 5, 6, 7 sacks, I don't see him making the jump to an elite pass rusher. And because of that, their entire pass rush is likely going to suffer. So that's going to mean that the offense might have to pick up a even bigger slack. This might be Matt LaFleur's greatest challenge as a head coach. So shout out to you, Matt. I got faith in you. We got some questions before the year, but that's what's going to make this exciting. So drop comments, with feedback. Maybe you let me know who your favorite team is. Maybe it's the Packers. Maybe you have a prediction. Whatever. Talk to me. Hit the like button, of course, and sub if you haven't already. DrippMan, 2 P's, P for Packer.